Podcasts, and Spotify.
Yo, Salaam nerds. It's your boy Neebs, aka Watch with Neebs, and I'm here with not my co-host Jazz, but also Nub the Poet. Nub, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
It's been a minute since we've had you on. I think the last time we had you on was Polite Society.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, that was a good episode. It's one of our favorites. A lot of people have came back and given us compliments about that one. That was a fun episode.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, that was a long time. I haven't even watched the movie since then. I really should.
I know. I think it came out on like Amazon Prime now, or one of these streaming services. I believe it's on.
Peacock.
Peacock, yes, that's the one. I actually watched it on the plane. I was watching it on the plane, and there was a bunch of like, there was like a white lady next to me, and she was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, you gotta watch this movie. It's so cool. It's about these two Pakistani sisters. One of them wants to be an artist, the other one wants to be a stuntman, and like they go through all the stuff, and then it becomes like a sci-fi thing. It's like crazy." And she was like, "What? Sign me up!" She was so excited.
Yeah. I mean, it's really unfortunate how it's not been talked about a lot.
Yeah,
'Cause, like, I know obviously we've talked about it in our circles and everything. And it's just like it's for me it's the next step in South Asian representation. It's not
yeah,
just like yes, it still has the elements of second generation, but it goes beyond that. Like you said, it gets into sci-fi and action, and it's like it just breaks the typical mold of like, oh, this dramatic immigrant story that's just like very heavy. And it's so much fun and so like filled with vibrancy. And
yeah.
for me, I'm like, this is exactly what I want more of.
Exactly. I feel the same way, man. I feel the same way as you do. And like I gotta say, I think at this point, that might be the bar. Like Place, like I thought like Miss Marvel was the bar, but like it wasn't that high of a bar. But I think Play Society is the bar now. Like that, they outdid a lot of people's expectations. So it was a really good movie. If you have not seen our podcast episode, go check it out. I believe it was in season 4, so it's in one of the season 4 episodes. But how else? What have you been up to, man? What have you been up to since then?
Oh, since then, that was like in April. So,
I know.
um, yeah, it's just creating and consuming media, not talking about it because of the strike.
Yeah, strike's
But
been rough.
yeah, I mean, I got into this new show, and then I was like, I can't talk about this new show. So like, it is, it's one of my favorite shows now, and I'm just like, I can't talk about it, at length.
I
Obviously, like,
know.
I can mention it. It's called The Neighborhood, and it stars Max Green and Cedric the
Oh,
Entertainer.
I've seen clips of that. They dive into a lot of racial stuff on that
Yes.
show, and it's done really well. At least from the few clips I've seen. I've never seen a full episode because I think it's on a platform I don't have. But it's really good from the videos and the clips and the TikToks I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the first episode and I was hooked for that exact reason because they do such a good job of exploring cultural and racial, topics, but
Yeah,
also keeping it lighthearted and fun and just like again, similar to Polite Society, it isn't so heavy all the time. They have
yeah,
moments where they're serious and obviously they give that time the emotional weight it deserves. But a lot of
mm-hmm,
times it's just quippy, fun. It's a white family moving into a black neighborhood, predominantly black neighborhood, and there's just that cultural, disconnect that they learn from each other and like explore. And and it also has this really good commentary on masculinity. That's something I really love about the
mm,
show. Because you have Cedric's character, both of them are fathers, Cedric and Max Green's father
right,
characters, and so you have the kids, all of them boys, and you just see the difference. Like Max's character is more of that very like progressive type character that it's like he gives his son space and he listens to him and lets him whereas like Cedric's character is more like I'm the man of the household, do what I tell you, kind of
yeah.
respect, more old school mentality. And then all the sons are growing up, so they're like trying to navigate all that, and I think it's really interesting the way they go about it.
Wow, that's really cool, man. I've seen a lot of clips and like they dive into like police, how the police profile people. They dive into racism in the black community, colorism. Sometimes when you can't tell if somebody's black or white, like one of those situations,
Yeah.
they dive into a lot of things that we've never really had to deal with in the sitcoms from like the 90s, right? This is very,
Right.
very different. You know what, man? Watch a few more episodes and let me know if it's worth getting into it. It feels like it is. I just don't have the Peacock.
Yeah. Oh no, it's on Prime. Last I checked, I've watched through the whole series. It's 5 seasons. I've watched through all 5 seasons. Like
Holy crap! It's been on for 5 seasons.
yeah, it started in
Oh,
2018. Yeah, I was shocked too. I was like, wait, when did this come out? As 5 seasons renewed for a sixth. Obviously, it's on hold right now. And actually, I
yeah,
saw them all. They like they're SAG-AFTRA is doing videos about the strike and everything, and all of them were in a couple of videos. So I was like, oh, this is great. Like they support that effort. And
yeah.
but yeah, they're renewed for a sixth. So
That's
uh,
really cool.
yeah. So I burned through it though. I was so into it.
Yeah. Oh man, I gotta check that out. Maybe we can cover it on the podcast once we both catch up on it. I would love to do a review on that. That's cool. It does look like a really good. I think the girl in there was one of the girls from Two Broke Girls.
Yep.
I forgot her name, but she was great on Two Broke Girls. That's another show that
Yeah.
is pretty funny.
Oh yeah, the
Um,
cast is strong. Like, and the woman, the actress who plays Cedric's wife, her name's Tashina Arnold. I'm not too familiar with her, but like I
mhm.
looked into her filmography and everything. Just like huge. Like so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really strong cast. And then the newer actors, or maybe not as well known actors, they carry their weight and everything. And like it's just a really cohesive unit, and people that look like they're having a lot of fun. So yeah, I can't say enough about the show.
Okay, you got me. You've convinced me. And we're in. I will check it out because I actually need a new show to get into because I have run out of episodes of One Piece, which is an anime, and now I don't know what to do with myself.
Isn't that show like 500 episodes or something?
No,
More
bro,
than that.
it's 1,000 episodes, and I got through 416. And Netflix ended at 416, so now I don't know where I'm gonna get the
Um,
remaining 500 episodes.
Tubi maybe.
Someone said Crunchyroll, so I'm gonna look
Oh
into
right.
Crunchyroll. That's the one that I'm gonna try to get into. But the thing is, like Crunchyroll, I can't access like at the gym, whereas Netflix I can, because I would
Mm,
just watch these shows at the gym. I always have like a gym show because I've been
okay.
told to do more cardio and I can just get on the treadmill and watch stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can maybe check out Tubi then if you can't access Crunchyroll. It's a
Okay.
free. It's not a great streaming service, but it does carry like things like that. Like apparently it carries all the animes and like other weird projects.
Oh, very cool, very cool. That's super cool. So, like, what have you been talking about on your platform since the strike's over? Because, like me, I haven't been posting much on my
Mm,
platform at all. We've still been doing the podcast and stuff because I think like New Rockstar and some of these other podcasts are considered entertainment journalism. So you're kind of just like critiquing it in a little bit, but not in a promotional way. So we try. It's like a very fine line. It's been tough, man. It's been tough. But on my TikTok, I have not posted any episodes of the podcast. I have not talked about anything going on when in Struck Media work, but I have, tried to get into more reality TV shows. So we've been still doing reality TV show, been promoting that. That's the only thing that like has been keeping us afloat.
yeah, you and reality TV. Yeah, I don't personally enjoy it, but I respect the like
Yeah,
passion for it, and just like I've seen how
it's.
your platform's grown with that specifically.
I tell people reality TV is like baseball. Majority of it is stupid and boring, but every now and then something incredible happens.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny. I haven't talked about it too much, but I've been working on content to talk about professional wrestling because I'm a huge fan of it.
Oh yeah.
And they're not contracted,
Yeah, they're
but
not struck work.
it's not struck work. So I was like, oh, I've wanted to talk about it anyway. Here's a great time. But then it's just like now I'm getting ideas. I haven't for the past few months,
Mm.
uh, and because I don't really like talking too much about like people do like weekly reviews and they talk about it, but I like to explore more of just like different things about it and like kind of break down, deconstruct, and hyperanalyze different
Yeah.
storylines and things like that. And professional wrestling is in such a fascinating place right now, especially. So like WWE got bought out by
UFC.
yeah, or their parent company. I
Whatever.
forgot what
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
called, Endeavor, I think, or something like that. Maybe it's not Endeavor. Maybe whatever. They got bought out, so now they're actually merged together. They're under the same company, UFC and WWE. But for the first time in like 50 years, WWE is not run or owned, I should say, by a McMahon, which
Yeah.
is wild. Like,
That's insane, right?
mhm.
That is so crazy. Which is probably for the best because Vince McMahon has a lot of like shady stuff under his belt of stuff he's
Yeah.
done. He's it's one thing like he's not a good person in his character as Vince McMahon, but he's also not a great person in real life as Vince McMahon. He's done
Nope.
some shady stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not into like wrestling at the moment where like I watch it, but I do go on A&E where they talk about the 90s wrestling and they go in the backstories.
Mm,
I love those. They're so
yeah.
good. Like they'll talk about the Monday Night Wars, like WWF versus WCW,
Mhm.
and all the drama that went behind the scene and all the changes that happened, and then all the rivalries. Every rivalries were like
Yeah.
some were just epic, and you just like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, and then you got like Triple H and The Rock. There's so many good revs. I love the backstories because you're like you find out things that you've never known. Like Scott Hall came up with the idea of Sting wearing the white face paint and being the crow and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and like so many other things that Scott Hall did. Scott Hall was known as Razor Ramon, and this man had so many great ideas, and he was just giving them to people. Be like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if your character did this and your character did that? And I was
Yeah.
like watching these background like behind the scenes stuff. I was like, whoa, I had a whole new respect for this man. I thought it was really really cool. The whole
Oh
ideas
yeah.
with the Outsiders, NWO, like a lot of that was like Scott Hall coming up with it, which is really cool. Things I've never known.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The back stage behind the scenes stuff is as interesting, if not more interesting, than the product on screen most of the time. Just because
Yeah.
like understanding why certain decisions are made on screen. It's in the same vein of like when you watch any movie and you're like, well, why did the director choose that direction? Why did the script decide
Yeah.
that? Like so it's the same thing. And understanding I'm sure it exists also in like film and television, but there is so much ego within the professional
Oh
wrestling scene
yeah.
that you're just like, man, this could have been so amazing if this guy wasn't so petty. And like
Yes.
Hogan is notorious for just being like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to have that guy beat me. That's it. And then
Yeah.
because he's such a big star, the owners are just like, all right, you're not losing
Yeah.
tonight. And it's like,
And,
what?
and they have like these things written into their contract, like creativity clauses, where you can like invoke and say, "Hey, I don't want my character doing this or losing and stuff like that." And I
Yeah.
was just like, Hogan was notorious for like invoking that.
Yeah. It's like The
That
Rock,
was
where he's like, he can't lose a fight in movies. He has
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
That's
It-
honestly, I believe that comes from him being a wrestler. I
you're
honestly
right.
believe that whole thing is just him so used to like having that creative license in his like character and stuff, and he's just like, I'm not gonna lose. I'm not gonna lose a fight. Are you kidding? I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
this is a movie. This isn't wrestling.
That's so funny. The other one that I saw behind the scenes and it was like a rival is the documentary on the Ultimate Warrior, who was
Mhm.
my favorite wrestler, and then come to learn he's like homophobic and xenophobic and just this horrible person. I'm just like, no, not the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, yeah, it's honestly a lot of people from the 80s and even 90s have very complicated
Yeah,
backgrounds, for lack of a better term, and WWE's been trying to clean up and get better at that. And from the interviews I've heard with people backstage now, the wrestlers, they're like, it's way less competitive in that sense. Obviously, people want to be the top and they want to be
yeah,
valued in that way, but there's more of a team effort from what I've heard from wrestlers, where it's like before it was literally just it was cutthroat and just every person for themselves.
yeah,
And like like we were saying about Hogan, it's just like, no, that like he wouldn't care if, and it's not just him, it's just like what is best for me as opposed to what is best for everyone for the company, the business. And yeah, I mean, I think that change has definitely been helpful to the in-ring work, like the on-screen stuff, but also
Yeah.
what it sounds like the backstage morale and people's like getting along with each other as opposed to just like having this the animosity or tension.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And like you learn like some weird things too. Like I had no idea Freddie Prinze Jr. was a writer for WWE. He used to come up with storylines and stuff for people, and I'm just like, Freddie Prinze Jr. Like
Yeah,
from Star Wars and from Buffy and like
yeah,
from She's All That, like that guy.
yeah, man. I mean, there's so many people that you're just like, why were they there? Most of the time, it's like in the case of Freddie Prinze, I actually don't know why he was hired. I mean, but like the people that they get on screen, the celebrities that they get on screen, you're just
Yeah.
like Snooki was once on
Oh my god.
WrestleMania, and you're like, why?
Yeah,
Donald
yeah,
Trump was part of is it like has a history with the wrestling because him and Vince are like BFFs pretty much.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so like, but you hear all these different celebrity names, and you're just like, what the heck? Why were they on this? It's just like,
Yeah. Like David Arquette with an actual champion of WCW, like the weirdest fucking thing. The guy from Scary Movie, or not Scary Movie. Is it Scary Movie? What's the one?
uh,
Scream. The guy from Scream. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it was. But what's funny is all these years later, he's actually now like working in like independent organizations and like actually like earning his way. Like he got that spot because to promote like a movie or something like
yeah,
that. But now he's like legitimately just like I just want to wrestle, and he's not on WWE or any big name promotion. He's
yeah.
just doing his thing, and I can respect that.
All right, cool. That's pretty awesome. We love to see that, man. That's
Yeah.
just so funny. I don't know. I think wrestling is just fascinating. Like, have you ever seen the show The Rock did? It's called Young Rock, where he talks about his like life in wrestling.
I haven't actually.
It's
I kind of
it's
avoided
actually
the Rock stuff.
it's actually really interesting because like they go into like like they have actors portray so many characters. Like you'll see like Superfly Jimmy Snuka, you'll see Yokozuna, you'll see Ultimate
Mhm.
Warrior. Like you'll have like all these actors playing them, like Mr. Perfect, and you're just like, oh man, this is so cool. And he talks about things that have happened. A lot of people have been critical of it and saying, okay, the timing doesn't match up. We don't know if this is really true. They did get fact checked, which is like fine. Like yeah, fact check it because like obviously they have creative license
Yeah,
and you're allowed to change things around for the story.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
which kind of reminds me of of a segue that we wanted to
Fact
talk
checking.
about. You like the way how I went all the way around to find a loop to get into that, right? Like my transitions are sick. So
Yeah.
this is yeah, the Rock show basically they would change things around. There were dates and characters, and I don't know if they did it for people's safety, for doxing, all this reason, but there has always been this thing where like, hey, we have a creative license to change some of the information around when you're telling a story. Now, one of the persons that was in the news recently was Hasan Minaj, and it was fascinating. An article came out about him in the New Yorker. I read this article and I'm like, holy shit, Hasan Minaj is a psychopath. Like I was like, this guy is insane. Some of the
Yeah.
stuff that they said about him, I was like, oh my god, this guy is crazy. And I was just like, I was in disbelief. I couldn't believe it. Some of the things that they said was, if you guys have seen his first special, I believe it's called Homecoming, he talked about how he got stood up at prom. And one of the reasons he got stood up at prom was because his date's mother did not want him to be in pictures and be a brown boy because the pictures were going to go and be sent to family. And, like obviously prom is an important part of people's lives, especially like white people. And they want to take pictures of, prom and send it to their family. And just the fact that he was like a brown boy, they were like, no, our family would be a little weird about it. And basically, they did this when he went to the door and get picked up. And they kind of just told him this and shut the door on him. Now, that did not happen. But the way this article kind of exposed him was like, none of this happened. They were like, first of all, Hasan made this entire story up. They broke up for completely different reasons. And they broke up a week before prom. It had nothing to do with racism. And then this guy invited that same girl to his show and did this whole special, making fun of her and calling her out, and then posting a picture of her and her name, and it was slightly airbrushed out a little bit and slightly I would say like censored. And then because of that, this woman got doxxed and got death threats and all this stuff. Now, this is what the article told us and led us to believe. When you read that article, what were your thoughts on that?
Pretty much the same as you. I was like, oh goodness. It's also like, Hasan, really? And also, dang, like, nobody's perfect, but
Right.
like, as one of the few South Asians we have that seems to be pretty decent, though there have been, people who, or women specifically, have talked about his behavior on set and stuff during the Patriot Act. So there are things, but like, this was like this whole other level, I guess, because it was part of
Yeah.
a bigger publication and everything, like,
Yeah.
and so it was just like another one, or one of the few, it's like, just like, oh, we have to
Yeah.
like scratch him off, not cancel him. I don't believe in canceling, but it's just,
Yeah.
you just look at him differently, right? You're gonna look at everything
Yeah.
he does going forward differently then,
Like he
and
was a
everything he already did, everything he said
Yeah.
and did. You're just like,
I
and then
know.
there's a whole debate of, does it matter because he's a comedian and he's storytelling and all this stuff? And I'm like, that's also interesting. But like, the way he presents it feels less like it's a stand-up and more just like a TED talk,
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting. And you mentioned about the Patriot Act. I think I remember the Patriot Act stuff, and I think that came out, and there was an article, and it was a woman who was a writer, and she said the environment on the show was toxic, but she never specifically said it was
Okay.
Hasan. But she did say, the environment was toxic, and it was, it didn't really say Hasan, but it was his show, right? It's his show.
Right.
Like, regardless of whether it was him actually doing it or not, it was his show.
Yeah.
But like that added with this was like, yo, this guy unhinged, right? And it sucked to hear that, and I was like, oh man, who would do this? But turns out that's not exactly what happened, and the man came here with receipts. And when I saw that, my jaw dropped. I was like, he broke this down like a forensic scientist. And I was just like, damn, Hasan, you're it was really, really interesting. So, like, if he had done this, yeah, for sure, man, he would have been, like, number one, a horrible person to do this to this young woman, right? Obviously, this young woman is with a brown guy now, so she's learned, she's grown. Why would you subject her to that? Why would you put her in a situation where she could get doxxed? That is completely horrible. And then he said, like, they quoted him saying, like, well, it doesn't matter because it's my emotional truth, or something like that. And that's where people lost it. A lot of comedians came in and said like that, and they're like, hey, listen, if you're changing the story to make your story funnier, that's okay. If you're changing the story to make yourself seem like a hero or a victim, or like some kind of like racism or sexism or something like that happened that didn't happen, that's not okay, right? And I agreed. I was like, yeah, you know what? That should be the line. That should be the line. You can't make yourself a hero. But then when you find out what actually happened, you're like, no, he didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Because what happened was, all of the stuff around the racism actually happened. The only difference is it happened a week before. It didn't happen when he got to the doorstep. And the getting to the doorstep was the part where you get the audience emotionally invested in the story, which I get that. You change the date and you change the time to make the story more concise and make it more, like there's something to lose. Like the audience needs to be engaged. And I get that. But the racism actually still happened. All of that stuff happened. And then he came out with emails. He came out with receipts. And he got email correspondence back from the girl where she's like, yeah, my family's come a long way. And he's like, what did they come a long way from, huh? What do you think, right? So it was one of those things. And then you find out that the name that he blurred out wasn't even his name. The pictures that he posted up were actors, and he did that on purpose to throw people off even more.
Yeah.
And she came to the show. He didn't even invite her to the show. So that was another lie that this reporter made up. She came to the show, and basically she told him she loved it. She thought it was great. And then, they had a nice exchange. So this reporter was obviously doing a hit job on him. And then he shows emails of him sending stuff to her and voice chats of them talking. And she's just going, yeah, sure. She did not care what he had to say. She did not want to fact check any of that stuff. She had a story that she had to run with, and that's what she was going to do. So there were 3 stories that he brought up that he kind of just broke down. And this was the first one. And this first one, I feel like man was justified. I think he did everything right, and I don't mind that he moved a date up like a week. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I mean, yeah, it's not the same emotional impact if it was just like, oh yeah, we were hanging out outside, and that's when, it was like a week before prom, and she expressed this feeling, and we both went our separate ways. And I was like,
Yeah.
I get it. It's not the same impact for this story, but he didn't lie about the content, right?
Yeah.
He shifted around. So I don't know. I don't think it's a big deal because, like you said, it gets the point across in a much better fashion because the racism, like you said, like Hasan has explained and shown evidence, was still true. So all you're doing, like as an artist myself, I write poetry, and for the most part, what I write is pretty close to like 100% if I'm writing my own experience. But of course, there's a little like, it's not even embellishment. It's just trying to make it, like you said, really get the heart of the issue. And so sometimes that just has me saying like, different, like just not saying that specific moment in the exact manner in which like giving it a play-by-play, and so like I remember I've written a poem about the first time I experienced racism, and this kid said something to the effect of, and at this point I'm not even sure if this was the exact line, but I'm pretty sure he said, why don't you take that bomb off your head? Like that's what I remember. He could have said take that bomb off your head, but in my mind it was, why don't you take that? Is that really like, it was still said, I still felt it, like if I change the word around slightly, does that really does that affect my credibility? Like I was still 10 years old. It still happened in the 5th grade in 2002. None of that has changed. It's literally just some wording and some, positioning of it. So, I mean, it seems like, that story was the one I saw the video of. And like, I thought it was really interesting too, because we don't really get to see people responding, like big name people. You see people online responding all the time, like internet celebrities and stuff. But you don't really see like a celebrity like Hasan Minaj responding to something. And for him to do it in the most Hasan Minaj way was like perfect.
It was definitely a Hasan Minaj like video. Like it was basically like he had jokes in there. He had some self-deprecating humor. Like it was. Well, it might as well have been a special.
Yeah, it was a Patriot Act, basically.
Yeah, it was wild. All right, and the second story. So the second story he talked about was that someone there was an anthrax scare, and somebody sent a white powder to his house, and it got on her daughter. Now, the lie here is that it didn't actually touch his daughter. Right? It fell near her, which like it could have as easily touched her. Like it could have. There's no difference between like someone sending you a letter and it almost touched your daughter, and then it did touch your daughter, right? And he said that they took her to the hospital, and they added a character who was his bodyguard. Now, what happened was a lot of the things that the bodyguard said were either not said or they were said by his wife.
Mm.
And he said he told this story a few times and he workshopped it. And every time he got feedback that his wife came off very naggy in the story.
Mm.
So he created this character of a bodyguard so that some of the heat could be taken off his wife and be put on this character, right? Because obviously male privilege, like a man can say the same exact thing a woman can and he won't be called naggy, right?
Right.
So that's one of the things that was changed in this story. And a lot of it was because he was talking about Saudi Arabia, and there were definitely a lot of death threats about him and stuff like that. So this article made it seem like that never happened.
Mm.
He never took his daughter to the hospital. She wasn't there. Like it wasn't something. He just made the whole thing up. All he did was got some powder in the mail, and then the whole rest of the story was made up, right? And
Mhm.
I'm like, that's such a huge difference between what he said and what they reported. And it's so wild. And like, I don't care that he had to create a character to make his wife not look bad. Like, that's not a problem for me because the story that somebody tried to hurt his family is still accurate. It's still
Right.
facts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. This I actually hadn't heard uh his response to this part. So, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Um hmm. Yeah, like you said, I think the fact that he didn't make up this scare in general,
Right.
I think that's at least to me, that's the big thing. Like if that never happened, and then but he made that up, that I think would be the problem. But he did go to the hospital, so there's some. Yeah, I mean that's so wild.
Right? It's so wild to take that story and manipulate it. And this woman, like, I don't know if she had a vendetta against him or the New York Times has a vendetta against him or they wanted to sabotage his running for the Daily Show because he was in high consideration to take over the Daily Show. And then when this happened, I think like a few days later, they said he is no longer in consideration for the Daily Show. Like, this article literally cost him a job, one of the most prestigious jobs in the world, because the Daily Show has like 100 not Oscars, Emmys, right? It's a
Yeah.
prestigious, very prestigious job that they cost him. That's wild.
If that is the case, he could have a case for defamation, but
Yeah.
um yeah, that is really sad because I know so many people were actually hoping for him to be the host. So,
Yeah. And the thing is, like, the fact that like these two things plus the third one, which we'll talk about in a bit, it seemed she wanted to make it seem like brown people just make up the racism that happens to them. Like, it seems like that was the thing that she was pushing, right? Like, it sets us back so far, and everyone talking about it, every single TikTok I've seen about it, have been from like white podcasters and white comedians who, they were going after him, which, like, yeah, I get that because he sounded like a psychopath in that story for sure. So I
mhm.
understand going after him, but there wasn't that nuance of like, hey, listen, these things still happen to us. These things are still real. Just because this one guy made all this up allegedly, it doesn't mean these stories aren't real. And all of these podcasts and all these white men were on their high horses saying, look how half of these stories probably aren't true. They're everyone's like Hasan Minaj, right? And that was so dangerous. It was so dangerous that that was going around, and that was the outcome of this New Yorker article. And I'm so glad that he came out with the facts and stuff like that, where people were like, "Oh shit, this lady really had it out for him." Because look at all of the emails that he sent her correcting all this stuff. They didn't fact check. And Hasan Minaj came back and says, "It's so weird that you fact checked a comedy special and you didn't fact check your own article," which I thought
Yeah.
was crazy. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I watched the first part, I saw this on TikTok actually. I didn't even see like the full video. Like the parts were on his TikTok page actually. And so I'm just like watching it and there keeps being parts where he shows like because I guess his manager or someone else was on the call with them as well.
Yeah.
And so he was like, oh yeah, I can just have them email all of this to you, all these, like,
Correspondence. Yeah.
yeah, all of it. And I was just like, how do you not, someone has given you all the information. How do you not look at it? Like, how did you come to the piece that you did after
Yeah.
looking at all of that? That is, you can't do that unless you're doing it intentionally. Like, that's not just an honest mistake of
Yeah.
like, oh right, I just totally skipped this whole conversation between him and his ex or whatever, his date.
Yeah.
I totally missed it by accident somehow, even though that's like a centerpiece of my story. This one conversation, like, how baffling that they were just like, sure, yeah, please send it all over. And highly, I would be surprised if they didn't. I imagine they sent it over like almost immediately, right? So
Yeah.
like, unless they were lying about that, which I don't believe. I believe, that all got sent over. So it's like, did you just not look at it? Did you just
Yeah.
take notes when you had the conversation? And like, because when you are in a conversation with someone or you're in class and you're taking notes and like you hear things, so you just try to jot down what you can. I feel like that's what happened. Is like, oh, incident happened week prior, not
Yeah.
at, and then so no equals no races. Like, I just feel like they jotted down notes. Like, that's
It,
like,
it it was bizarre, bro. Like I totally agree with you. I think that's so crazy. And the rhetoric around like the conversations that this was, what you call it, inspiring was very scary. And like, don't have to tell you like, Islamophobia is super real and it happens. And a lot of the times, the Sikh community is an unfortunate, bystander in that. And you can't just say like Islamophobia isn't real. Not only is it real, it affects more people than just Muslims. It affects, the Sikh community.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I guess fortunately or unfortunately, I haven't seen those responses to his to the article. So
Yeah.
like, but the fact that people are, it creates that sense of doubt of belief in
Yes.
our struggles.
Mm-hmm.
It's disheartening and it's frustrating because like I've been working pretty much my whole life to get my community and other communities to be seen and like have
Yeah.
our issues valued and like taken notice. And so for one article to have the potential to make people suddenly doubt any call of racism or Islamophobia or xenophobia or hate because of our identity, that is so frustrating. But that's also not surprising, sadly,
Yeah.
because like as brown people, as people of color, we have to always fight much harder to get that
Oh
like
yeah.
same dignity and respect. And like, yeah, so compared to like a white person who can just say one thing and like automatically their word is considered more valuable.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I was just I just made a video the other day about like a white kid saying, "Hey, this rally has swastikas," and I was like, "Wait a second, I was at that rally," and I just posted a video of all the pictures and all the videos, and I'm like, "Yo, there was none of that there. This guy just told a bold-faced lie, and everyone believed it." And that was so wild that like they have that power. That's a little bit of that privilege, but it is what it is. The third one that I want to talk about was the one where Hasan was like, "All right, fine." Like the thing that she was getting at was there was this guy who was an ex-con, and he became an informant. And he would go to the mosque and the gyms, and he would find these young Muslim kids and get them to incriminate themselves, or what's that word where you
Berger? No,
no where you could like trick somebody into damn, I can't
coerce,
remember. It starts with an
manipulate.
E. It starts with an E, I think. All right, it'll come to me.
Okay.
Entrapment. That's what it
Okay.
was. They were trying to do entrapment. I was like, I know Catherine Zeta-Jones is in here somewhere, and I was like, where am I getting Catherine Zeta-Jones from? Like, yes, entrapment. All I was thinking about was Catherine Zeta-Jones' butt, and I'm just like, wait, why is this the word I'm trying to find? Oh man, yes, that's the word I was thinking of, entrapment. And then she asked him, "Did you talk to this guy about your special and what was happening?" Like the same way she was framing that he didn't care about the girl Bethany, which isn't her real name, and he kind of just like did this whole special on her without any warning and like transparency. She was trying to say that, hey, he had the pattern of this. Look what he did with this informant. He didn't let this informant guy know that he was going to be talking about him at this show, and he didn't use the informant's real name. But when she asked him, hey, did you let this guy know? He's like, no. He's like, and then she made that a whole thing. But he's like, bro, this man was trying to entrap me. He was trying to get, he was spying on the Muslim community. Like, I don't owe him shit. I don't give a fuck. And, like, I was like, yeah, he doesn't. Like, it makes the total sense. Like, I don't see why Hasan had to do that and reach out to this guy in any way. He was an informant for the FBI. Like, who cares about him? And he was trying what he was trying to do. And he got these I think there was a guy who this whole story was about, and he's someone that Hasan knew, and the guy himself was like, no, you told the gist of the story, like all the important parts happen. It is what it is. And the guy sent him emails, and Hasan shared the emails, and even that I was like, she was wrong. And then the one part was really crazy. Like, she would misquote him because he would write 3 paragraphs, right? And she would take the first line of the first paragraph, and completely ignore the second paragraph, and then take like the third line from the third paragraph, put it together, and make it a new quote. Like, she Frankenstein a quote. That was unhinged behavior. That's so unethical.
Has this person been fired?
No. Not only have they not been fired, they doubled down. They're standing by the article. She just sent out a tweet saying, "We did a great job fact checking. We've talked to all these people, and we stand by the article." And she reposted the article, and I'm like, "Oh, she's trying to get like more views to the article."
Yeah.
And she was just like, to me, it sounded like we did such a great job at crafting this narrative that like we stand by it. And the fact that like he has these receipts, like it's an open and shut case, man. Like, I don't see, unless she has receipts and she's gonna come out with them in like a couple of days. I don't see her coming back from this. And the scary part is this woman's on Twitter and New York Times, and she's talking about Gaza, and she's talking about all this other stuff that's happening. Like, can we really trust a person like this? It's really scary that these, like, first of all, she's holding comedians to a higher standard than politicians, right? Like, you have Joe Biden going, hey, 40 babies were beheaded. I saw it myself. Turns out, absolutely not true, right? No one's blinking an eye. This guy told a comedy special and moved the date, and he is a villain? Like, it's bizarre to me how they just went after this comedy special. Like, it was wild.
Yeah, it is interesting why this is the target, why Hasan's the target in this current moment. Like, he just has his own comedy career. He's chilling, living his life. And I don't even, did they like, was the purpose to just like do a piece on him or something? Is that why the interview was there in the first place?
All right. Here's me putting on my conspiracy theory hat. All right.
Okay.
All of this is alleged. All of this is this conspiracy theory. Just me thinking about it. Right. I just think the show, The Daily Show, has great weight behind it. Like, it has so many Emmys. Jon Stewart was like, the flagship person who really just like took it to the next level. Trevor Noah did a great job with it. I think there's a lot of people who think a brown Muslim man at the head of Comedy Central's The Daily Show is dangerous. It's just dangerous. They don't trust Muslims. They don't trust a South Asian man. They think he could have, ulterior motives. I just don't think they trust him. And you know what, man? I'm gonna double down on my tinfoil hat. Again, I'm not saying this is true. I'm not saying it's happening. None of these are corroborated. I don't know. This is just me guessing. But it's mad convenient that they completely decimated his credibility right before this whole war between Palestine and Israel just went off. Like, that's crazy coincidence. He was the biggest mouthpiece that people had, who was brown and Muslim and talked about social justice. He had a show called The Patriot Act. He was the number one person that I expected to talk about what is happening out there. And the fact that this guy didn't say anything for a week because he was like, hey, I'm going to go on Instagram and say this is happening. And everyone's just going to turn around and going, hey, aren't you the liar? Like, didn't you just lie about your whole special? They completely discredit him. And they prevented him from talking about anything that's going on right now in the Middle East. I'm just saying there's two things that are very sus. I'm not saying that's what happened. I have no way to prove it. I have no idea. I'm just saying if it fits into a square hole, I don't know. Maybe it's a square. We don't know. That's all I'm saying. That's my conspiracy theory hat. Take it for what it's worth. I'm just a kid from Jersey. I don't know anything. But if I, use your brain.
I mean, I think you make valid points,
Listen, the intelligence agency is insane. They know so much stuff, man. They know when a threat of an attack is happening. They know what could happen. They know who is. They did the same. The FBI and the CIA did the same thing to so many people in the black community. They did.
Yeah.
They legit did that. They found ways to discredit so many people in the black community during the civil rights movement. That's their MO, and that's been documented. That's been admitted.
Yeah.
All right, man. All right, let's not go too deep into it because we are just a comedy show, and we are just all we do is talk about nonsense that happens on TV and media. So I don't want to hit on me coming through. FBI is probably watching this right now.
I always make the joke that I'm already on certain lists. Honestly, I always make that joke.
I know.
I'm pretty sure India's watching me right now, so it's fine.
Oh yeah, man, that's true, man. It's crazy. In India is it's in a weird place right now where like they're full on supporting some people, and it's pretty crazy.
So it's not even. I know you don't want to get too deep into this, but there's also other stuff going on with India other than like.
Yeah. It's just
wild. Like. I have not been talking about because I've actually been on kind of a break from social media, like posting. Yeah. So like when the news came out about like Canada accusing them of potentially having assassinated someone on Canadian soil, I was just like, oh goodness, this is gonna go sideways super quick. And then they're just now having such a passive aggressive petty war with each other. Like they're just like, you're expelled from the embassy. They're not letting Canadians into India. It's just like, all right, okay, I guess we're just not going to talk it out. We're just.
I don't know, man. I'm afraid we're gonna hit like World War III, man. There's everything is volatile right now, man. Like Pakistan's mad at India, Pakistan's mad with Afghanistan, and then we got like China, and then we got like the Middle East. It's just crazy. Yeah. Everything is just really explosive right now. It's scary.
Yeah, it's a lot right now.
Yeah, man. But listen, we're still here, and we will cover reality TV shows for you, so you can be distracted and forget, and just we'll talk about Loki and the time whole agency, and we'll talk about the Golden Bachelor, where there's a 70-year-old man trying to find love for the second time. This is what we do here, man. This is what we do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would be intrigued if you treated wrestling like a reality show and watched it and covered it.
I would. Oh my god. Honestly, man, if you met me back when I was a teenager, I was the biggest wrestling fan. That would have been my dream job, to just talk about wrestling all day, every day. But then, like, when I went to school, like, engineering was so hard that, like, I didn't have time for TV. So I just couldn't watch it. And then there was, like, a 4-year gap. And then I was like, all my favorites are gone. So I just, like, stopped watching.
Yeah, I get that. But, like, honestly, what's really cool about wrestling is you can jump in at whenever. And
really? You think so?
Yeah. Because, so first of all, there's a lot of issues with, like, the storytelling. But one thing that the company is, like, the best at is letting you know what has happened and who the characters are. And, like, the promo packages for, like, a wrestler or for a feud, always on point. Like, they're just always so good. So, like, you can watch a pay-per-view that's coming up, right? Like, Survivor Series is coming up in November. And if you don't watch any shows before it, the main matches, they'll have such great, like, promo packages that show you the build-up to it and, like, why these wrestlers are fighting and everything. that like you don't even need to watch, because it's like 10 hours of WWE content a week. So it's like no one should or could watch that much. Like it's absurd. It's 3 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Tuesday, and 2 hours on Friday. 7 hours. So it's absurd, and it's unnecessary to sit through all of that. That's like that's 3 movies in a week every week.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And there's like reality shows attached to it too, right? Where people try to become like the next, I think Next is the name of it or something like that.
They do that from so NXT is now it's kind of become more of like the minor leagues, like their farming system, their developmental brand. So that's what show on Tuesday, but it still functions like its own brand, right? So they have their own roster of wrestlers, own championships. You get to see people. What I like about NXT is if you watch that on a weekly basis or on a consistent basis, it doesn't have to be week to week, but on a consistent basis, you really get to see a wrestler come into their own. So like typically they'll debut and you'll see like their attire's nothing special and like their moveset still needs to be worked out. But then like a couple months down the road, they're like, you'll see them in like just very that flamboyant, exciting. They'll have this special entrance and like it'll just be worked out. It'll be polished and it'll look so like you get to see them from the ground up, and that kind of makes, at least for me, it attaches me to them more, because now I'm like, okay, I've seen this person struggle. I've seen them when they were not good and not like, their character was like whatever, to now like they totally know what their character is. They totally know how to perform in the ring and tell the story, and it's like, oh damn, like they're really someone I'm now attached to, because it's not just, because for me, wrestling is all about the story. I love the in-ring stuff. Like, it's fun to watch, but there's no story. It's hard for me to get into the actual match, But then when there's these characters that have these stories behind them, like right now, one of my favorite things is the current Intercontinental Champion. His name is Gunther. He's like a 6'2" dude, 260 pounds, and he just beats the hell out of you. And it's so like his whole persona is he's just dominant. He's like a final boss. Like everybody steps up to him and gets knocked down, no matter how big or small, how quick or strong. He wrecks everybody, and he just carries himself with this aura of like, yeah, I'm freaking amazing. And like his chops, he does chops. Ric Flair would like chop.
The chops. Woo!
His chops.
Nature boy.
You hear them, so they're so like, you see them. You don't just hear them, you see them on the opponent's chest, just like shredded chest, because of how hard he chops the dudes. Like, it just feels, again, all this is scripted, and like they're trying to not hurt each other, right? But Gunther has a way of making it safe so the people aren't being hurt, but it still looks like he just wrecked you.
That's so funny that you brought that up, because being safe is a big part of like what makes you a good wrestler. And I know like Bret Hart was one of those people. He's one of my favorites. He was respected because of how safe he was in the ring. And then Goldberg was one of those people who was known as being not safe in the ring, and people really did not like Goldberg.
So like that's the beauty, is when you can make it look real without it actually being real. And like, this is, again, you learn from backstage interviews and stuff, and they're just like, they just talk about him, just like, that's the magic, that's the sweet spot, is when you can make it look intense and real. There's this guy right now, his name's Ilya Dragunov. He's a Russian wrestler, and he's currently the NXT champion. That's their farming system, their developmental. But dude, his energy is like always so intense and always so real that, like, again, even though it's fake, you're just like, that looked like it hurt. Like, I know that they protected, they covered, they whatever to, reduce the effect. But I'm like, some things you can only reduce or fake so much. At some point, you are still making contact and causing pain. And he is able to like make it look like, oh, I do not want to be at the end of that shot. Like he has this move literally where he just jumps up and drives his forearm into your head. The guy's laying on the ground. He just leaps and hits you with his forearm. I'm like, how do you not feel something from that? Like, sure, it's not like actually trying to break your skull, but there's some pain there. His face just tells you how intense it is. I'm just like, damn.
That's cool. I love that. I love your passion for wrestling. Someone over here is like, "Hey, Attitude Era was the best." So that's what I grew up with. I grew up with the Attitude Era, and
Mhm.
was it the best? Yes. Was it also unhinged? Yes. Some of the stuff that happened there could never happen again. I don't
I
know. It
applaud
was
the
wild.
Attitude Era for its storytelling, right? It
Yeah.
knew how to create characters of all tiers. So, like, a big issue with wrestling for the past decade, WWE, I should say, for the past decade, is like they focus on a couple of guys at the top of the card. So, like John Cena, Randy Orton, and
Yeah.
maybe The Miz, right? Like, those are, and those people get stories, and everybody else it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
But in the Attitude Era, every tier of wrestler had something going on.
Yes.
So you had The Rock and Austin, you had the
Yeah.
Hardy Boys, the Dudleys, Edge and Christian,
The
you had
Godfather. Like,
right.
everybody had a story.
Yeah, exactly. You had Tajiri and Godfather and Val Venus, like weird characters, like for
Yeah.
sure. Like you said, unhinged. Val Venus was a porn star turned wrestler. Like, what is this
Yeah.
character? You know? But like
Yeah.
but he had a storyline and he had a character and a personality that you remembered him, even though he was never going to be a main guy. He wasn't never going to be an Austin or The Rock, but you
Yeah.
remembered him. You remembered
You
the
remembered him.
Godfather. You remembered all these smaller characters because they had like that personality. And over the
Yeah.
last few decades, that's kind of gone away. They're getting more of it now, which I really appreciate. But like that's what I think made the Attitude Era so memorable is that
Yeah.
there was something for everybody. If you wanted the big
Yeah.
stars, you had them. If you wanted the crazy, like really good in-ring people, you had guys like Kurt Angle and the Guerreros and Chris Benoit. I shouldn't mention his name, but
Well,
yeah,
skill is skill. I get
yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. And then if you wanted like silliness, you had again like Godfather. You had characters like Blue Meanie and there's just like all these
Yeah.
different types. And so I think that's what was like the good thing about the Attitude Era. What I think the reason I struggle to call the Attitude Era the best is because there's so much trash in there as well. There's so much
Yeah. You don't remember the
misogyny,
trash. Yeah. So,
homophobia, so much racism in there. There's just like
so much racism. It was so
so
bad.
yeah, it's so bad that to me I'm like, but how can I call it the best when it really perpetuates such the toxic work environment, the
Yeah.
like blatant like drug and alcohol glorification, and I'm just like,
Steroids and all that stuff.
yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
just like, also leading to like the death of many wrestlers so young,
Yeah. That's
and
so
so
true.
the
That's so
safety,
true.
even there was like safety wasn't becoming more of a priority till like the 2000s, right? Like
Yeah.
wrestlers were getting just like so. It's hard for me to say it was the best. I get why people do. It's super memorable, but for me, it's hard to say it was the best because of all these other factors that maybe some
Yeah.
people don't prioritize as much. Which that's their business. I'm not telling them.
I think for me it was so good. It's because of the competition they had. They were just like WCW versus the Attitude Era. They were just one stepping each other, and then you had the difference between both of them. So I think like it just kept it alive.
For sure.
Someone says Earthquake was one of my favorite wrestlers. Speaking of Quake, you're hearing that she's going to be in the Marvels. This is a random thing that comes up on all our episodes. Somebody's just obsessed with Quake. But yes,
Okay.
Earthquake was a wrestler. Earthquake was a wrestler,
Yes.
and the guy who played Earthquake, I think his name is John, was an actual real life sumo wrestler in Japan.
Oh, I did not
Yeah,
know that actually.
yeah, and like people have always asked like who was your favorite wrestler or the best wrestler? Bret Hart and a bunch of other people have always said that it's the guy who played Earthquake. They said he was a huge guy, but he was the kindest, gentlest man ever. And every
Yeah.
time he saw kids, he would be like, they would be scared of him, and he would literally cry and be upset when he was a heel because like children would
Mm,
be scared of him. And then when he finally became a face, when he teamed up with Typhoon to be the national disasters, and the kids actually start like liking him, he would like it was the best time of his life. He was so
yeah.
happy. So yeah,
So
I don't know. I know these little things, but like I'm
yeah.
still not like in the
Well,
whole like genre yet.
if you have Peacock,
Yeah.
you can watch like everything from WWE. All those like
Ooh.
rivalry things you were talking about. WWE's
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
So in the US at least, WWE Network doesn't exist.
yeah.
They joined with Peacock, so all the content is on Peacock now. Like if you go to the
Oh.
scroll menu, it'll say movies, TV shows, WWE. So like you
Oh,
can
I've been
watch.
watching it. I've been watching it on Hulu. I didn't know they have it on Peacock
Oh
also.
yeah, they got it all there, and so like you can watch current stuff, but you can also watch like earliest Monday Night Raw, if you want to, all those like
nice.
rivalry documentaries, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I throw those on from time to time, just out of like, and I think doing more of that. If I'm not telling you what to do, if you want to get into wrestling, doing that might also help. They also do like shows that kind of like break down the highlights for each week. So even if you don't want to watch weekly, if you start checking those out, getting a feel for the different characters, then maybe you'll be interested in actually checking out a pay-per-view or something like that. I would love to have someone else to talk wrestling with. Like I have a few friends, but
let's do it. Let's start. We're gonna start Salaam wrestling. It's gonna be the new episode of week.
I mean, it comes if you like again. You said what Tuesdays, Sundays, and what Thursdays?
Yeah.
So like or Wednesdays, I think so. But Tuesday is NXT. They're developmental. That's from 8 to 10. We could watch and then talk about it.
We can do it, man. That's going to be our job, man. Just watching TV. Like that's what we're going to get to. All right, cool, man. This was so much fun, bro. It was fun talking to you about wrestling, about racism and Islamophobia and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, man. It's scary out there. Stay safe, man. I appreciate everything you do. So much love to the Sikh community who are always, never throwing Muslims under the bus and always having us in mind. I appreciate that. We love you guys. Anything you want to promote and say before we go? You want to let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on TikTok and Instagram, pretty much anywhere, but those are the two main platforms I use. Nuv the Poet, N-A-V the Poet, no spaces, no underscores. I post a lot on talking about pretty much all of these things that we actually talked about. So like representation in media. I talk about my faith, and I'm trying to get into talking about wrestling more, actually. I have a lot of ideas for wrestling videos that I want to talk about, because like wrestling's just been becoming more fun for me, at least, to consume. And when I get into something, then I want to talk about it more and more. So that's usually how it happens for me. So yeah, I mean, I had a podcast, but it's on hold right now, so we'll see how that goes. But those are the main things. If you are interested in learning about the Sikh faith, again, you can check out my TikTok. But I also started like a broadcast channel on Instagram, testing that out, see how that works. You can join it, specifically where I talk about my faith, just as a way to share more of my thoughts, because sometimes I'll have a thought watching something or just walking around, and I'm just like, oh, I have a thought related to this faith, related to some principle or practice, but I don't have the time or energy or desire to make a video about it. Sometimes there isn't enough content. It's just like, oh, I had this fun thought about how like I'm currently rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender, seeing a lot of similarities and parallels to the Sikh faith and practices. So I might just be like, hey, watching this episode, it made me think of this, Sikh belief or whatever, and just like give a little spiel, versus like making a whole video, because I gotta get ready for that, and tying my turban takes time, getting my beard ready. It's a process, dude. Process.
I get that. It's you guys and the hijabis. You both know how it is. It takes a while to put all that stuff on and get ready. You got to do all that.
Dude, the conversations I've had with hijabi Muslim women is like, we're just like in sync. Like we just get it. We don't have to like anything. It's just like, yeah, just like take it. Just like, yeah. It's like sometimes I just don't want to. You're like, yeah, I know. Sometimes I just want to tie it. Just like throw on a hoodie or whatever to cover my head.
Throw a hoodie on. Yes, I've seen them do that. It's so funny.
It's great. But yeah, cool. Man, I just want to say back to you that I appreciate you, and like, I feel like there's a lot of solidarity between the Muslim Sikh community that unfortunately doesn't go noticed and really should. And like, obviously our communities have our issues as well, not going to deny that. But I think particularly because of post 9/11 world, like there's been a lot more solidarity and support with each other. And I value it a lot. Like there's one story that always baffles me. I was at some event in the city, and there were some Muslims there, and we started talking, and then like somehow we got into talking about racism we experienced, because I guess that's what we do. And so I was just like explaining, and then they're like, oh, my condolences for the hate that you faced because of us. I was like, what? That doesn't make sense. Like, you should be apologizing to me, bro. Like, you didn't do anything. But like, just that level of compassion that they felt so bad that I experienced hate that was meant to be targeted towards. Like, I'm just like, don't apologize. But like, that to me is so volume.
No, I just had an experience similar to that. So I went to this thing called the Oscars Film Festival, and basically it was a Muslim film festival with Muslim movies, and the comedian was Muslim and stuff like that. And he was a black Muslim, and he was telling some joke, and then like he prefaced it with like, you know what, like I don't really always look Muslim, so I don't really get that hate. He was like, but you know what I'm talking about, and like he pointed to a Sikh what's him called photographer. There was a Sikh guy hired to do the videos and stuff, right? And then like the guy was like, yeah, and then what happened was he was like, get up here. And then he asked the guy to stand up. So the guy stand up, and the whole crowd saw that he was Sikh, and everybody started cheering and clapping for him. It was such a funny moment, and it was really cute. And it was so great how like everybody just cheered for this guy because they're like, they realize that he is someone that has to go through all of this racism, and it's because, of Islamophobia. But like, I just, the image of like the entire theater of like Muslim people just cheering on this Sikh guy was so nice. It was really, really nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, the solidarity is there. It's just there's so much we're working through internally in our own communities that we sometimes don't express it and share it, and we should more. Like this is like and we've known each other for a couple of years now, I think, at this point. Like just like the fact that we have these conversations and can like relate on our own levels and no experiences, but still have that connection, I think is huge. And like being voices for our community and our communities in that way, and just like showing that like there isn't always animosity between the different faiths and stuff. I think that's important in and of itself. Even if we're not like hanging out together and doing like interfaith dialogue, like the fact that we interact with each other and are just like enjoying and with each other and in each other's company, I think that's a statement in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, my family's from Lahore, so like that's Punjab, and we vibe with Sikh people regardless. We're Punjabis, man.
My mom is from Pakistan. Like my mom's family is from Pakistan, and they obviously came to the India side post partition. But like my Nana ji is from Lalpur, so it's just like, and so much of Sikh history is in Pakistan too.
I know,
like, so
it
much.
is.
So it's just it's wild that it frustrates me every time like I'm arguing with Sikhs because they're trying to tell me like, why are you supporting Muslims? I was like, are you dense? Like, are you just are you so just it's frustrating beyond belief when I get comments like that.
Yeah. Trust me, we got a few of them on our sides too. But people don't know that like when one of us wins, we all win, and that's what we want, right? So yeah, man. Listen, thank you so much for being on the show, man. We really appreciate it, guys. Everybody in the comment section, everybody who was listening on the podcast and listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and anywhere else you listen to. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, guys. Salaam, nerds.